Hey, this is Ian with you in the Fight Back. And today I'm actually reviewing a book I kind of accidentally read. I just kind of knocked over a pile of books, and there it was, Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And I kind of went through it pretty fast, so I didn't get much sleep the night before, and I got up early this morning so I could finish, because it really was a great read. And it kind of gets a false bill at sometimes just advertised for teachers, but it's much more than just teachers in the narrow sense. It's very much a revolutionary book. I find its conclusions, its methods, in line with the best methods and practices of Marxism, Leninism, Maoism, and anarchism as well in some cases. And I find the book is summed up very well by the last paragraph, which I'll read out to you, and then I will go over it. The oppressor elaborates his theory of action without the people, for he stands against them. Nor can the people, as long as they are crushed and oppressed, internalizing the image of the oppressor, construct by themselves the theory of their liberating action. Only in the encounter of the people with the revolutionary leaders, in their communion, in their praxis, can this theory be built. And this is very much elaborated in the book. We have the oppressor class. You can call them bourgeoisie, feudalists, or whatnot, but they are essentially an exploitive class. We know that. And as much as they dehumanize the oppressed, the proletariat, the peasantry, or whomever, they are themselves dehumanized in this process. As it said, in the master-slave relationship, just as you don't want to be the slave, you don't want to be the master, because you're dehumanized in that process. And you reduce all to objects. That's what the oppressor does. You're objects. It's all about the cash nexus, money. And the highest value is the pursuit of profit. And what does the oppressor want? Well, to maintain their domination, to pursue profit. And their educational system, the way they educate us, is they look at students as objects to be deposited with knowledge, and this is called the banking theory of education in the book. And their rule is maintained by conquest, and this can be not just of a foreign country, but within a country, divide and rule, manipulation, cultural invasion, not just say of invaders against indigenous, but the dominating class imposing their cultural values on the dominated class. And of course, they use ideology and myth as well. For instance, believing in the American dream, which, as George Carlin said, you have to be asleep in order to believe it. And we have the oppressed, and in this, of course, the revolutionaries as well. And these are seen by the oppressors, of course, as objects. They're not subjects. They're not authors of their own destiny. And they are incomplete human beings, in a sense, because they've been exploited and alienated, and they, of course, themselves have been dehumanized in this process. And in many cases, they internalize the image of the oppressor. They want to be the boss. For instance, the example used in the book is land reform, not so that a peasant gets land, but so they can in turn be a boss and employ workers, which is not quite liberation. And they perceive the world in a distorted and fragmentary way. We know this. And people, again, are incomplete beings, yet live in an exploitive world. And the thing is, revolutionaries, the leadership, if you were, they need to fuse with them, the oppressed. And of course, there may be distrust at first in this process. If you read the accounts of Che in Cuba, you very much see that initially there was a great deal of distrust among revolutionaries and the guerrillas. And the leaders, who in many cases may come from the dominating classes, we know that Lenin, Che, they came from rather wealthy backgrounds, yet in the process of the revolution, they remolded themselves. They cast away the old values of the oppressor. And in the process, what they were doing is, when fusing with the oppressed, it was their revolution is about building a human society, this incomplete humanity that both the revolutionary leadership and the oppressed feel is what they're striving to overcome. and to build a human society, real liberation, and that's what we're striving for, all of us. And this human society means you need some form of revolutionary education. Maoists call this the mass line, and we have an example here in Pedagogy of the Oppressed, which I would really think that the author kind of smacks on the head, the idea of a Marxist or liberation style of education. And it's about dialogue. It's not about depositing knowledge from teacher to student, as it were. And you're exploring the world together. That means teacher and student, as it were, or of course revolutionaries and the oppressed. And you're pulling back the ideological veil, the myths that we've all had to deal with and that type of thing. And you see what's really there in its totality. Instead of the fragmentary reality we're confronting, through your investigation, through your education together as teacher and student, you are seeing the world in its totality. And in doing this, you're striving to change it. And this is revolutionary praxis. And this is action and reflection on the world, theory and practice, as it were, in order to change it. Because Marxism is nothing if not the liberation of the proletariat, about overcoming our exploitative society. And this education process is meant to awaken critical consciousness. It's not about making leaders and followers. It's about making new and complete human beings who are striving for liberation. And we overcome the teacher and student relation of those with knowledge and those without, as it were. And in its place of this antagonism that bourgeois society we have both our teachers and students at the same time, learning and teaching, as it were. And it's really a great elaboration on this. And he goes on throughout the book about how revolutionaries, the leadership, they need to fuse with the oppressed, to strive to fight with them, not for them. Because if you're fighting for them, like in a separate, like way up there, elitist type manner, it's the same as fighting without them. And the great revolutions that we look to, whether it's Russia, China, Spain, or Cuba, the revolutionaries were fused with the oppressed. They were fused with them. They weren't separated from them. And leadership is those who have the conviction of the necessity of the struggle. Because if you don't have that conviction that there's going to be a struggle, the struggle is otherwise unfeasible. And it's necessary for the oppressed as well. It's not something that can just be in the heads of the leadership. It has to be in the heads of everybody, everyone who's striving for revolution, and the oppressed as well. So what you have here is, this is very much, I would think, in line with a great deal of what Lenin said as well. And revolutionary leadership, again, you have revolutionary consciousness, knowledge of the revolution. And revolutionary leadership needs to adhere to the people. And in doing that, you can't mimic the old oppressors with their manipulation, their divide and rule, their commandism, their ideology, their myths and lying. Because in the revolution, and what we're trying to do is build a human society, and that means our methods are different. And that's what people like, say, Glenn Beck don't understand when they think we're just a bunch of manipulators doing everything behind people's backs. No, we're open. We're trying to do something different. And you need a cultural revolution to remold all human activities. Again, this is Mao, and as it were, but it's also found in other Marxist thinkers as well. And this is, of course, done by the masses themselves. This isn't done behind people's back. This is done up front. And what do we have? We have the revolutionaries, we have the oppressed, fusing as one. So what do you need to win? Well, you need cooperation. You need unity. You need organization. And you need some form of cultural synthesis, and he just defines that as at one point as the fusion of the revolutionary leadership and the people. Again, the guerrilla moves through the people like the fish through water, as Mao said. And again, the revolution is about human liberation for all. And you need to, and of course, after the liberation, after taking power, you need to prevent the old oppressors from reconstituting the old order, but at the same time, you don't want the revolution to stagnate into a bureaucracy. this is kind of a rough outline of Pedagogy of the Oppressed, but it really was a smashing read. I really couldn't put it down at times, and I highly recommend it. Not necessarily just for teachers, although I am technically trained as one, but also for those of you involved in the struggle, because you'll get a lot out of it. There is at times some dense philosophical language, but it's a great read, and he addresses himself to Marxists and Christians alike. And I really don't find anything really in here that contradicts with any Marxist message. Or I would add, in certain senses, the more liberation aspects of Christianity. And I'll be going into that in a future video about a liberation theology priest. So, Pedagogy of the Oppressed has my blessing, but you should read it even without it. So this is Ina. Until next time.